For the first time since Splatoon 1, I'm actually going to be making this video about a weapon that has just been released, the Squeezer. If you'd like to see me do these kind of videos for the future weapons, let me know, and I will consider making more of these kinds of videos in the future. But for today, I actually want to talk about the Squeezer, the weapon that just came out, and how I feel about it. So let's first go over some of the basics of the weapon itself. It is technically classified as a nozzle nose weapon. It's grouped with them in the code apparently, so I'm going to assume that it is classified as a nozzle nose weapon. It can also be found with them in the weapon search when you're in the training room. It'll be grouped with the L3 and H3. The Squeezer technically has two types of fire. You can tap the button to fire a single shot, or you can hold to fire one shot and then follow with an auto fire, very similar to most of the shooters in the game. The big difference between the two types of fire is when you tap, you will have long range, but as you hold, your range progressively goes down and will get to about splatter shot range, slightly less than splatter shot, but it's about that point, and it becomes a 4 shot rather than the long range just tapping being a 3 shot. The weapon goes from 38 damage with a tap shot to roughly 30 damage while holding the fire button. The weapon is also the first shooter to get the splash wall sub. Currently it's only been on a roller, a sniper, a splatling. It's not really something that can be utilized to a great degree on those weapons. However, now that a shooter has had it, I would say expect a bit more splash wall play. Currently it is the only shooter with a splash wall, but it is definitely a good sub for the weapon. And then it having Stingray isn't bad either, as currently Stingray is still one of the best specials in the game. So also, I wouldn't be surprised if you see people playing it simply for the Stingray, though that probably won't happen as often as other weapons because it probably doesn't get Stingray as fast as other weapons that use it. Sort of like the Heavy gets it pretty fast, the Machine gets it relatively okay. So it probably won't be played solely for the Stingray. So how do I feel about it? Well, at the time of recording this, I've been able to play it for 2 days, and I can certainly say that I'm having a lot of fun with this weapon. It is definitely something really unique, and it's going to have a pretty high skill ceiling. Something like this and its ability to change its fire rate to suit different situations is pretty big and pretty game changing for how a shooter will function. And it can be utilized to a great degree, and I can see its use. Players with good aim will have no problem being able to use this weapon to an effective degree. The tap shots are more effective for long range opponents while holding down, or for people that are close up to you, or as a follow up to the taps. I've had just so much fun with this weapon because of how different it is to most shooters. The change in fire rate is interesting. Its kit is really good and actually suits the weapon very well, as opposed to a lot of weapons not having kits that do that much for the weapon or only cover one aspect the weapon falls shorted. This one does a pretty good job at giving it what it needs. A splash wall isn't too bad, and it's also just a decent sub in this game. And like I said, Stingray is one of the better specials in the game right now, so it can't go wrong having that either. It's just got a really solid kit, and the weapon itself is relatively solid. It will take some time getting used to using something like this, as like I mentioned, it is completely different to any other shooter, though it does function very similar to a nozzle nose in some degree, where there's going to be a tapping and there is a sort of rhythm to the taps if you want to get the perfect amount of shots out when tapping. But overall, the weapon just feels really fun to play, and it actually is one of the more fun weapons that have come out recently, and it's probably one of my favorite weapons so far, and it's only been 2 days. The one thing I've seen a lot on Twitter, though, is a lot of people have been making comments about having to tap to effectively handle long range, and not many people are used to this, and people making jokes about getting like arthritis or cramps or whatever, when I'm perfectly fine with doing this. I've used brushes for the last 3 years, so having to mash a trigger is nothing new to me. So it feels perfectly fine to me, and I have no problems doing it. So where do I think it lies in terms of other weapons? Well, it's got some good things and it's got some bad things. The good things are that the kit works with the weapon very well, and the weapon itself, when played well, can do a lot. But the downside is that it takes a certain amount of effort into this weapon to be able to use it effectively, where a lot of other weapons in this game don't require as much. This means that more time is going to be dedicated to this sort of weapon as in comparison to like a splatter shot or an NZAT, where it's going to be a lot easier to pick up and play. This weapon is going to require more time and dedication into learning how to use it effectively, which can in turn affect how you play other weapons. If you focus too much on this, you might be able to lose your ability with something else or whatever. But other than that, I feel like it could be pretty decent. Its kit provides it something nothing else in this game has the ability to, where splash walls still are good and they have potential. They've just been on weapons that can't really do too much with it, or they don't help the weapon as much as it would with a shooter. I definitely feel that this weapon is in a good spot right now. It'll take some time. People will still have to learn how to use it. It is something brand new and a type of weapon we've never seen before. So it'll take it some time for people to finally get a grip on it and be able to handle it and be able to play it. But I feel like once people get to that point where they've invested enough time to figure out how to use it and where to apply it and how to apply it, it could be very dominating. And the people, like I mentioned earlier, that have good aim will certainly shine when it comes to this weapon. Their ability to be able to just use the tap shots more than having to use the auto fire will allow them to just get kills and just slay. And the Stingray is going to help them with getting long range coverage, with getting people out like snipers or whatever. And the splash wall, just letting it survive longer in fights against weapons that have a faster kill time. And looking at the data for the Squeezer, its kill time isn't even that bad. It's just slightly slower than the NZAP, but for the range that it'll have, which I think is about Splattershot Pro range, which isn't too bad either. So overall, I'm a really big fan of this weapon. It is certainly an interesting weapon and the most fun I've had with this game in quite some time. To be honest, it's certainly something that I can see myself enjoying, and even playing this, and even when I lose, I still feel like I'm having fun, because it's something that I feel like for the first time in a while I've had to sit down and learn how to use this weapon. Where with most shooters and stuff, you can just have the same knowledge that you can apply from another shooter onto it. This weapon, being completely brand new, requires a new thought process and a new way to approach it. So just having the experience of having to relearn something, to learn something new, to take a different approach at it, it's a lot of fun. It's something that I've actually been looking forward to, and that was what I found fun about the Splatbrella, was having to take something brand new and figuring it out. And this is a kind of vibe I'm getting with this weapon. And it's certainly going to be fun, and I can definitely see it being useful for the time being. There are certain weapons that are in the game's code that share a very similar kit to it, and that may or may not replace it. I don't want to jump to conclusions here and saying that it will drop off once a certain weapon comes out, but I definitely feel like right now it is sitting in a good spot. However, it may take too long to get to that point. Depending on when the other weapons in the code come out, or when they finally release these other weapons, it may be too late for this thing to see its use. But if people are able to catch on to it early and be able to make use of it early, then I can have a pretty decent chance. So in my opinion, the Squeezer is a pretty good weapon and definitely worth looking into. It is going to require a lot more effort to figure it out, but it could be very rewarding in the end. Looking around on Twitter and in Discord chats, there's definitely an appreciation for this weapon. There's going to be a lot of people that are try and sit and figure this out. And I've already seen a couple people that have already given up and jumped back to other weapons, but there will still be people like me that will continue to play this weapon to try and figure it out to see how it's best utilized. So I want to hear everyone else's thoughts on the Squeezer, so feel free to leave comments below. If you've played it, let me know how you felt about it, and if you think it's good or if you think it's bad, feel free to share your thoughts on it below. And I want to thank everyone for watching, and I will see you next time.